Coming to you live from the back porch of Odd Bob's ectoplasmic estate east of Springfield. Welcome to the Dr. Kitsune Odd Bob Uncanny Coffee Hour.
Where we're always respectful with a touch of impish irreverence. We tell stories with wit and wisdom, encouraging a strong look at indigenous perspectives.
And as always, Saoirse, here to lend me a bit of magic and intelligence to the conversation. Also, I might be a girl this time, but I wouldn't mind being a horse again and going for a bit of a ride. Puka style.
Brought to you this week by Odd Bob's Organic Arugula.
Unadulterated.
Have you ever been a little constipated? Have trouble pushing it out? Got a little hair stuck in there?
Jesus.
Never worry. Try Odd Bob's Organic Arugula. 1,000,001 uses.
I feel like I had a baby.
Feckin' idiots.
Always respectful.
With a touch of impish irreverence.
You're both away with the fairies.
So, what are you drinking today?
I was drinking an oat milk latte
Hipster.
with Mexican mocha spice.
Oh. That sounds good.
No,
And
it
it's
doesn't.
oat milk this time.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just wanted to mix it up.
not hemp milk.
Not today.
And what are you drinking, Saoirse?
I'll be having some Riders. Here's whiskey and coffee. Black.
Good.
Isn't that yours? Wasn't I supposed to give that back to you?
I am drinking a blackberry sage tea.
Ooh,
I felt it would be fitting.
that sounds delicious.
It is actually, it's quite delicious. It's dried blackberries with white sage, ground up, made into a tea. It's very relaxing,
Tasty.
tasty on the palate.
Yeah,
Pinky up.
nice. And we're back.
So what are we going to talk about?
I was just going to ask you that exact question.
Oh.
What do you got?
So, all right, this week I think we're going to give my buddy Donovan a call.
Oh,
And Donovan is a Diné, Navajo man who, hey, there's Gracie. Gracie agrees.
Gracie approves.
So Donovan is a Diné
Navajo.
man who will be sharing some stories about Ye'i Tso, which is what they call Sasquatch,
Ooh, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds amazing. Let's do that. I want to acknowledge to everybody that listened to our last episode that we will have a continuation of those ghost stories and specifically the Yuri.
Traditional Japanese Yore stories will
Yes.
also be there. And I think
That's next episode.
I actually think what we're going to do with this episode is we'll probably break it into 2 episodes as well. And we'll have a follow-on episode.
Cool. Very cool. He's a talker then.
Yes, he is. I expect him to tell us stories that will go long beyond our coffee hour, which is 28 minutes.
Roughly 30, I'd say.
So
Yeah.
we'll probably have 2 or 3 coffee hours about the Ye'i Tso.
That's fantastic.
Fantastic indeed. Let's get him on the gab box then. Hello? Hello? Who's that then?
My name is Donovan and I love to talk about Bigfoot. Talk about Sasquatch. Ye'i Tso. As a kid, I always was like that. You know, I was raised by the older people. You know, with the kerosene lamps and the fireplace giving off light, and the old people drinking some strong coffee, speaking only in Navajo, talking about skinwalker stories or ghost stories, haunting stories. You know, Bigfoot stories. You know, I just had to stay up and listen as long as I could, even though it gave me nightmares. But I had to know what was out there in the darkness, you know. And I come from Monuments Valley, Utah, Arizona borderline. So just coming from that area, you know, it's always been mysterious, you know. It's always been mysterious in the daytime, night, all the time. And, you know, a little bit of a wander around at nighttime is a big no-no. You know, it's always been, you know, installed in us, you know. It's been put in us that you don't wander around because, you know, you can run into something out there that you wish you had it, you know. And a lot of my growing up into teenage years, I was a rebellious young kid. You know, I was a rebellious guy, and I wandered around and, you know, going running at night, hiking at night just because I couldn't sleep. Mm-hmm. And, you know, even went all the way up to having my first sighting, you know, going hiking in outside of Helchita, Utah. This is on the Navajo Nation by Mexican Hat, Utah, the Four Corners area. So I went hiking with my family. You know, they came from out of state. They were raised in Nevada. So they would come to the reservations in the summertime only. And when they do, we would always spotlight and, you know, play hide and go seek and do all kinds of things, you know. And that's where I'm going to lead into a lot of the stories, you know, encounters that we had roaming around at night. And, you know, they came through, and I was like around 18 years old at the time. And, you know, they're like, let's go hike right now. Let's go. You know, I want to go somewhere right now. I was like, are you sure? You just drove 16 hours to get here, you know? It's a long drive. Aren't you tired? He's like, he works in the mines. So he's like working 9 miles underneath the earth. So, yeah, he's a driller. So, you know, he's like, I want to see something. I want to see something scary. I was like, you're going to regret that, but let's go. And then I was like, who wants to go? And I had 2 aunts and 3 cousin brothers that were younger than me, and 1 uncle, the one that's a driller. So all right, let's go then. And within the 30 minutes of our hike, we went over 1-2 hills. We probably walked about 2 miles away from the community. The Navajo Nation is really, really stretched out. It's a vast land, you know, with sparsely populated, and the terrain is really rugged. You know, it's very rugged, and you got mesas, you know, that go to 8,000 feet, 9,000 feet, and you have mountains around too. You got trees of all kinds: ponderosa, cedar, juniper, pine, and you know, we're in high desert as well. In Slot Canyons, you know, some fine dirt, cottonwood trees, creeks. So, you know, it's really, really not populated at all. And well, we got 2 miles away, and we heard a yelling coming from the hill, like a strange yell. You know, like what all the locals here, they always think that it's drunk people, drunk people having a party on the hills, yelling around. You know, that's what everyone always would say. But this yell was not human. You know, it was disturbing. You know, at first for me, I thought it was a call for distress, and we only had 1 flashlight. My uncle had a really bright flashlight, and he shined his light over on the hill, and we seen eyes reflecting. You know, looked like it was on top of a mesa further back, going back and forth. And I was like, it's probably just a cougar or a bobcat. Let me go check it out. You know, we were just watching it, and then it stopped and it started screaming. You know, and I was like, what in the world? What is this? You know, like, what kind of scream is that? I never ever heard anything like that. You know. All of us, you know, all 7 of us were just standing there together with our flashlight on there, and we were quiet. I don't know how long we were standing there. This thing was, if you ever heard the Sierra sounds. Yeah. So
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing. all the vocal pitch ranges, the sound, the vibration, and how long it's carrying on, like longer than 20 seconds. So the lung capacity is just amazing. You know, it didn't get louder, or it didn't get quieter. It got louder, and it was oh man, it sounded like a lady as well, like a lady crying mixed in with it.
Yeah.
And it sounded feminine to me. And everyone, we were just looking at each other like, what the heck is that, you know? And, and I was like, all right, let me go check it out. It's probably a skinwalker. You know, I thought it was a shapeshifter.
Because that's probably, you just go check out skinwalkers. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can share some stories when I first seen one with my eye. I was 13 years old, but I was 18 this time. You know, I was like, I'll be back. It's probably a skinwalker. It's probably old man, or most likely it's an old lady, you know, in some kind of skin. Let me go check it out. I'll be back, guys. No one didn't follow me, so I was walking. You know, this whole time this thing was walking back and forth on the hill, and his eyes was reflecting amber. And I got within 100 yards away from my family, going down a hill, going towards up a little hill. And I got within 60 yards. This thing was loud, really loud, and you know, the light was still on it. And the whole time in my head, I was like, "This is a human. This is a person that knows black magic. This is a witch. You know, this is not a monster. Monsters aren't real. You know, it's humans are the monsters. We're the monsters. You know, I was saying that to myself, and I seen this thing stop pacing back and forth, and I realized that it had red hair because the hill that it was on, or it was standing, actually wasn't on the hill, it was standing behind the hill. So this thing was tall, and it had red hair, and it had no neck, and it had a dome head, and his eyes it stopped pacing, it faced me. And his eyes was facing towards us because it tells me it's a predator. And its eyes is reflecting amber, so you know I can tell between livestock and domesticated and wild. You know, the animals, the eyes, sometimes you can tell the reflection.
Sure.
You know? And yeah, so everything was telling me it's a predator, and it started swaying back and forth. And I'm gonna try it. Yeah, I'm not gonna try it. I'm not gonna try it. I'm not gonna try it. I was gonna try to mimic what it was doing, and it was screaming, and it was swaying back and forth really fast, and you know, it looked like a plywood, you know, huge, and its eyes was probably as big as my fist when I close them, you know, like a big softball, and its eyes was wide apart from each other, you know, like for how us humans, our eyes and our nose, you know, are proportioned to our face. And this thing was very proportionate to the size, you know, it fit its size. And, you know, the scream that it was giving off, you know, it was yelling, and it was making different vocals, and, you know, it just made my hair stand up, you know, staring at it, you know, and you know, all these memories came through from the back of my mind, you know, like this is the monster that we've been fighting with since probably the beginning of mankind. You know, all these memories, everything, the ancient fears, just like, boom, this is why they say you're not supposed to go out at night, because you're gonna run into the children of the night. You know, they're the children of the night. We're the children of the day. You know, all the elders always told me that. You know, I was never sure who they were talking about. I thought they were talking about witchcraft people. You know, skinwalkers that run around at night and do things at night. That's who I thought they were talking about. But I had no idea they were talking about all these cryptids that I was yet to run into. You know, and you know, this life is really mysterious, and it's a lot of questions that, you know, that I want answered. And, you know, why is there a goat man running around? Why is there a scimitar running around? You know, why is there a gargoyle flying around? Why is there a pterodactyl roaming around? Why is there, UFOs coming around? Why did I see a UFO abduct 2 people over 2 trailers, within seconds, with my wife, seeing all these giant cubes in the sky light up the sky with, a lot of these times I was never alone. I ran over a saber-toothed tiger. It was a giant cat, and I wasn't alone. And I started investigating that myself, and I came across 2 families that seen the same thing, that described the same being that I seen, and they said that it lives around that area. So, I have yet to get my cameras, some time to go and see if I can catch this on camera. That's my drive.
Do you think that there's more than one, or do you think it was just the one that was there?
I have no idea.
So when you heard the sounds, like the Sierra sounds, it was just like the one. It was like
yeah. We're going back to Sasquatch.
Yeah,
it was just one. Sorry.
Yeah,
It's just one for sure, but I wouldn't doubt it. There's another one around because all our attention was on that one, and there was a creek behind us. There's a cliff behind us, so one might have been down there. And after that, it walked backwards behind the hill, and the light, it stopped where I can only see its eyes, and it was staring at me, and it disappeared. And then, I turned around and I was getting closer to my family. I was walking towards the light. I was looking on the ground. As I was approaching them, I was trying to figure out what I'm going to say. What am I going to tell them what I seen? This is my backyard. I'm not afraid of anything here. I run at midnight. There's no moon, no stars. I know these dirt roads by heart. It's how well I know my terrain. And I got back to my family. They're looking at me with huge eyes, and I told them, it's just a bobcat. Let's keep going. It's all good. Let's keep going. Because we were trying to make it to the San Juan River. And, the whole time we got into the creeks, into the wash where it turned into a labyrinth, a maze. The whole time I let my family get ahead of me, and, I let them get 100 yards ahead while I was standing there in the wash, seeing if this thing is going to come, stalk us like a predator, because I know it was stalking us the entire time because rocks were sliding off the hills on our left and our right. And then, the whole time, a lot of things were going through my mind and my family. I don't think they had a clue. And like an hour passed, and, we got back to the main dirt road again, where we decided not to get to San Juan River because we got spooked out. And we're making our way back to the community, and the youngest member of the group that we had, he was 13 years old. And not only he was the youngest, he was skinny, he was slanted, he was slandered, he was small, and he was a little bit of a naughty guy. So he got ahead of us. This is around 3 a.m. now. So he got ahead of us around the bend. I seen him. He got 70, probably 60 yards ahead of me. He turned the corner. I looked down to look at my footing. I looked back up, and he is like 20 yards, 15 yards away from me. Just like, quick. And his eyes was really wide open, really huge, like it was about to pop out of his socket. And his mouth, his jaw, everything was wide open. And he wasn't running like a sprinter. He was running with his arms swinging around. I don't know if you ever seen Woody on Toy Story Run.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how he was. That's how he looked. He was running, and his legs, was dangling everywhere. He was running for something in his life, and he tackled me. He tackled me, and I was like, "What's up? What's up? What did you see? What did you see? Tell me. What did you see?" He was yelling. He was screaming. He was panicking. I told him, "Relax. What did you see? Tell me. I need to know. What did you see? Tell me. What did you see?" He told me it was a Ye'i in Navajo. That means skinwalker. And I was like, "Okay, tell me, what did it look like?" I need to know. You need to tell me, what did it look like? And he said that when he got around the corner, he said he seen what looked like to be a huge orangutan running towards him on all four. And he said that it reached out. He said his hands were so huge, it was reaching out to grab him. And he turned around, he booked it back towards us. And after that, I took him off me and I started running down that road where he came from. And I had a cousin that was a year younger than me join me. We were both running down that road. We hit the corner. We were running and we ran to a wall of stank. This smell made us stop in our track.
Try being around these two after taco and margarita night.
And I was gagging, trying to catch for fresh air, but the smell was so overwhelming. And this hill to our left goes up at an impossible angle where a human cannot go up. Even if we try to go up on all fours, we're going to slide down because the hill is full of fine red pebbles where it's very slippery. And not only the red pebbles, there's those flat rock, the red flat rock. So, the sandstone, that's what it is. So, it's really impossible for us to go up. But this thing was already at the top. And the pebbles and rocks were coming down from this hill. This hill was probably about, 100 feet. 100 feet in height. It was a steep hill. It looked like a giant pyramid. But it's not. It's just a hill. So this thing already ran up the hill and disappeared on the other side. Wow. And we went home and we never ever spoke of it again until he passed away last year. And everyone was there from that night. And I told him, hey, I wanted to talk with him. I didn't get the chance to ask him again, but do you guys remember that night? They're like, yeah. And I was like, just think, guys, that was a Sasquatch we ran into. I finally figured it out. And, my whole family's jaw dropped and they're staring at each other and they didn't want to say anything. They didn't say anything, So, it's just.
Do you think the Ye'i Tso, do you think they have any connection with the Sasquatch?
They avoid them. They avoid them so much that they have their own caves. So there's separate caves where Sasquatch takes. He occupies a cave or a cave that leads to a entrance to the hollow earth where the other cryptids take as well, and where we also took refuge from the flood, from destruction of the last world. We took refuge in there and we live amongst them for a time, and we left when the water receded. And when we came out of them tunnels, we couldn't speak with the animals no more. The animals couldn't speak with this last world they used to. So the skinwalkers, the Ye'i Tso, when they're out doing their own thing, they go around these things. Because if they run into them, these Sasquatches will kick their behind. Yeah, there is stories of that I've actually heard. They avoid them. They're the bigger things out there, and Sasquatch is not the only big thing out there. There's a bigger being out there than Sasquatch, and there's a more eviler being than Sasquatch that also takes those caves and lives those caves and occupies those caves. So we leave those caves alone, because if you go down there, no one's going to ever see you again. And if you do go down there and you happen to, be in there when none of them are in there, you're going to see remains. You're going to see shoes. You're going to see clothes. You're going to see toys. You're going to see women and children's clothing from all different periods of times down there, and even weapons.
Mm.
And shoe piles, different shoes, different moccasins. Like a lot of some of the witnesses I came across on Navajo land while investigating, they said that Sasquatch has a strange obsession with shoes as well. It's like, okay, that's kind of weird.
He can't find any that fit.
I don't know, right? he's a feet guy. I don't know.
Maybe he's into feet. Maybe we should start a OnlyFans for feet or something.
Yeah, he likes little feet. Yeah. So, go ahead.
Some of the stories up here that I've heard other Native people talk about, some of them I hear them talk about Sasquatch as a monster. Some I hear them talk about Sasquatch as a medicine person or someone that helps. Have you ever heard stories like that before?
Oh yeah, both. It's hard to put your thumb on this guy because he's really unpredictable.
Well, it's like humans, right? I mean, there's some
malevolent, yeah, good and bad,
and ugly.
Maybe different tribes.
They are a different tribe, that's for sure. They were created along with us at the same time by the Creator. Our Navajo culture story has that creation story. We're all created together. This whole universe was sang into existence by the Creator himself. And, over time, the Sasquatches just started eating us. There's more than one Sasquatch. There's different Sasquatches. They all look different, but they're all the same. They're cousins. They're all the tribe, the children of the night. There's the dog man is probably his cousin,
Yeah.
The mandrill, because if you look at the ape, the mandrill is not a baboon. He has the ear and a longer snout. So that's what some of the witnesses, that I've interviewed here on Navajo Nation, they said that, it had an ear and a snout. It didn't look like a skinwalker because a skinwalker can make himself look into a werewolf. A 9-foot tall werewolf with a medicine bag and a Navajo kilt and some symbols painted on his body, and he speaks Navajo. That's the witch, So they're two different things. One's a human, the other is not a human. The other is something more than a human, beyond the human. So like the stories of him doing good for us is like when the genocide happened here. All our neighbor tribes here, the Paiutes, the Hopis, the Pueblos, the Utes, everyone betrayed us. We had the Mexicans come in, we had the Mormon militia, and our own people turned on us too. So we had to resort to our witchcraft, and that's where part of my family descends from that line, the band that was never captured. We played hide and go seek from Bears Ears, Utah, all the way down to the Grand Canyon. We used black magic at night to attack. So we had a mental and physical warfare with the cavalry. So a lot of times they ran out of the canyons hightailing it. We fought guerrilla warfare every inch, and we never signed no treaty. So
good, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's why we say we're second place in hide and go seek championship. Yeah, and while the enemy tribes were and the cavalry were surrounding us, a lot of times Sasquatch would be coming in to save the day. He'd be going around that camp screaming bloody murder all night, scaring the soldiers and the enemy warriors while we made our escape into the night.
Do we have to hang up? I wanted to hear the story about the skinwalkers on the cliffs.
Well, that's a cliffhanger.
It certainly is.
Sweet suffering saints. Less blathering, more banter, if you please.
It makes me wonder, if you have, sometimes people can come together if there's an enemy that's greater than both of them.
Yeah.
If UFOs attack tomorrow, the whole world might put aside our problems and come together to fight them.
Except for those white nationalists.
Except those guys. They're just
Fork.
Nazis.
Yeah.
Fork.
Nazis. Yeah.
Anyway.
Gracie. That's her way of saying
Fork.
Nazis. Jesus Christ. Get Get a candle in here or
That
something.
was you. That was you.
That was not me. That was the dog.
Or isn't that a scent to wake the dead? Or the aftermath of a drunken fairy feast? Blurg.
Join us next week with
More uncanny stories. And
the Ye'i Tso and the cliff.
more to come.
Grandpa Spuds,
Thanks for sticking with us. Yeah, Saoirse, can you take us out with Grandpa Spuds, please? I love Grandpa Spuds.
Just what I always aspired to be, a creaky collection of bones and wrinkles. The very picture of enchantment I am.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time for more uncanny chats and coffee and tea. You can find out more about us, read show notes, and get your uncanny merch at www.uncannycoffeepodcast.com. Until next time, remember,
Never whistle at night.
take seriously all signs of cardiac arrest.
And above all else, remember,
we are not all monsters.
Dr. Kitsune and Odd Bob's Uncanny Coffee Hour is produced by
Mitch Kyoto Kitsune and
Bob Mason.
copyright protected under all laws, foreign, domestic, and supernatural by the Unseelie Court.
Gracie, you are a stanky dog.
Thank you, Gracie.